What we'll be making is a decorated notebook cover using 5 different colors of vinyl. This is an SVG that I designed. Make sure you download it so you can craft along with me. I'll be using my Explore Air tube. You can use any of the Explore machines, any of the Maker machines, and if you make the design just a little bit smaller, you'll be able to use a Joy machine also. The vinyl colors I'm using are gold, teal, bright pink, light pink, and navy. I'll be cutting on a blue mat. I also have a piece of transfer tape and a piece of parchment paper that'll help with our layering. I also have tape, a scraper tool, a weeding hook, and a pair of scissors. Any sort of blank notebook or journal like this, you're going to want to measure so that you know in Design Space how big to make the design. We'll upload the project in Design Space, go through breaking it apart and matching all the layers to our vinyl colors. That will help us stay really organized. I'm going to show you how to easily layer all the designs on a single piece of transfer tape and then in just one application, put it onto the journal cover. So let's jump into Design Space and get started. Okay, here in Design Space we have a new project. We're going to make sure that we have the right machine selected so we don't have to worry about that later. So I'm switching to Explore. Then we're going to upload the file for this class. Click Upload Image, then click Browse. And then you're going to find on your computer where you have saved the Wildflowers Can't Be Controlled. Click Upload. And then we're just going to click on it again here and click Add to Canvas. Go ahead and make it just a little bit smaller so it's easier to work with. Then I'm going to show you something that I like to do when I'm working with a project with a lot of colors. We're going to copy and paste 5 different little squares over here to the side. So just like this, they don't need to be lined up in any particular order, but this is going to help us as we choose the colors for each of the sections of our design. Okay, now what you're going to do is make each one of these squares match the color of vinyl that you've picked out for this project. So if you're using the same colors I am, great. If you've picked out different colors, that's also fine. So you're going to see here that I have a light pink, an aqua, a dark blue, like almost navy, a bright pink, and then gold. Okay, so now I have all my color swatches set up. Click on the whole design and click Ungroup so that we can do each color section separately. So now I can click this part that says Wildflowers, click on the color square, and then all of my colors that I've saved in my boxes are there up in the top row because they're in the project. So here's the gold one that I picked. I can pick another part of the design and change it to the light pink. I can pick these flourishes and make them dark blue. And then I can just rotate through and swap out colors, see what combinations I like, see if I want the design to be more light pink or more dark blue. And since I have those color swatches saved to the side, those colors will always be in that top section of material colors because they exist in the project. Now I'm going to speed this up a little bit so you can kind of watch the flow of the colors, but just in fast motion. I'm going to end up with dark blue for most of the letters, gold for the accents, bright pink for the flowers. Okay, once you have colors that you like, go ahead and select all of these little squares and shrink them up a little bit. Then duplicate so that you have another set of those squares, all the same sizes. And we're going to use these as little registration marks or pieces that we can line up when we're layering this design later. So take one of each color and put them in the top corners of this design. They don't need to be lined up exactly because we'll fix that in a minute. So we're going to take the main design and move it out of the way so we can just work with these squares for a minute. Select everything in this corner and hit center, and then everything in this corner and hit center so that they're stacked up exactly. Then, just because I like to do this, go ahead and line them up so that they're aligned on the top. Now you can bring the design back over so that it's kind of centered underneath those two groups of squares. Now we need to go through and attach all of the items that are the same color. So click the gold square, hit Control and click on the next gold square layer, and then find the gold part of the design, these flourishes, and attach. And then just to make sure that I got everything in that same color, you can hide that layer, and then we'll move down through the other layers. So Control click for everything that's this bright pink. Click Attach so they stay in the same spot when they're cut, and hide that attached layer. Now let's do the aqua layers. 2 squares and the dots. You can see I clicked the wrong one here. I clicked the wildflowers. So we'll just go back over to the layers, hit Control, click that layer, and then it will deselect it. And now we can get the dots. And with everything that's left, I can just select it like this, hit Attach, and now let's turn on all of the layers of all of our colors. Okay, it all looks right. Now let's make sure it's the right size for our notebook cover. I'm going to add a basic square shape. And then I need to uncheck the lock so that I can change each side separately. The blank space on the front of our notebook is about 5.75 inches and about 8.25 inches tall. Then right click on the shape and send it to back. So it's in the very back layer. And then we can get our whole design on top of it and see if we want to change the size at all. All right, and I'm going to make this just a little bigger because I want it to fill up as much of the space as possible on the cover. And then when that looks good, we can delete that black square, that black rectangle. It was just our reference, and we don't need that anymore when we go to cut. So click Make It, and then you'll see all the different layers of colors on your different mats. It will connect to your Cricut machine. For the material, I'm going to use premium outdoor vinyl, and for me it works best if it's on more pressure. You'll match up the material you're using, and then click this Remember Material Settings. That means I won't have to change it between each mat. And then just as a reminder, whichever section is white behind it is the mat that it's going to cut next. All right, so I've got all of my vinyl pieces. I cut them to about 6 inches by 8 inches, just so that they would lay nicely on my mat, and that size will be enough for every layer that I'm doing. So press it down nicely. If you're using an older mat, you might need to use a brayer. So I'm just showing you cutting the different colors here. You'll just load them in order, like your mat show. Again, another reason why it's really useful to have your project color coded in Design Space, so you can just look and see what color is coming up next. And then just weed each layer. Use whatever tools you find to be most useful. You can see I'm using my weeding hook here. This one helped a lot in some of these cuts where like some of the letters didn't want to stay stuck down, and so I would just use the pointy part of the weeding hook to kind of grab the letter while I was peeling up the vinyl with my other hand. And you'll see I'm kind of doing this side to side little wiggly motion, and that can help a lot of times with vinyl that's just being a little more difficult, just that motion helps it peel up around all of your cut lines around your shapes and letters. This one again with the back and forth motion, and you can see I have the vinyl kind of like folded back on itself so that it's coming back at a really strong angle. Okay, with everything weeded, now we're going to put on our piece of transfer tape. So you can see I have this grid line on my transfer tape, and I'm going to line it up with the top left corner of that left square. Then you'll lift away the backing from the transfer tape. Then you can press everything down with your hand or with a scraper tool like this. A lot of times it peels away the best for me if I flip it over and peel the vinyl backing or the paper backing away from the vinyl instead of trying to pull the transfer tape off of the top. Now grab that piece of parchment paper, and you're going to put the parchment paper just under the top of those squares, because you still want the top of the squares to be sticky. You just don't want any of this vinyl, the blue, for example, that we're doing first. You don't want any of that sticking down yet until you know it's exactly where you want it. So you can hold down the squares like this and then slide the parchment paper out from underneath. Now everything's exactly lined up, and you can press the transfer tape down again, most importantly to pick up whatever new color, so in this case the pink. Okay, see here I tried to take the transfer tape off and it works better to flip it over. Okay, this is where I had that problem, and I was glad that I'd lined it up on the grid lines. That square did not stay stuck to my transfer tape, which then is going to defeat the purpose of having those registration squares on every layer. So since I knew where it started, I could line it back up, and crisis averted. I could line up all of my squares still, and for each next layer I was just much more careful to put a lot of pressure there, make sure that I was peeling those corners up carefully so that those layered registration squares stayed in place on every layer. And again, slide out the parchment paper, everything's where you want it, and rub down the design so it sticks back to the transfer tape again. Okay, then when everything is peeled away, you've got everything stuck on to the transfer tape, go ahead and lay it down on the piece of parchment paper, and then take some scissors and we can cut off the corners. We can get rid of those registration squares. So I laid the parchment paper on top of the notebook cover. I used a piece of tape to help hold it in place once I knew where it was going to go. Slide the parchment paper out, kind of do a double check on placement, and then start to press things down to make all of those different colors of vinyl stick to the front of our notebook cover. I try to be pretty gentle in this part. I want it to stick down, but I don't want to damage any of the letters or put any crease marks into the top of our cover. So I went over it a couple of times with the scraper tool and then slowly peel back. Again, I'm just kind of rolling the transfer tape back over on top of itself and wiggling a little bit. You're just making sure that none of the letters or little corners want to lift up. So peel everything away, and now your notebook is complete. So this is what our notebook cover looks like now that it's all done. I hope you learned some good tricks for working in Design Space and for layering vinyl. If you have any questions about this project or anything else that I can help you with, please let me know, and we'll see you around the internet. Bye.